Hello, and welcome to YWCA's Facebook Live Connect, Heal, Learn speaker series. I'm Laura Gomez-Horton, Clinical Director of YWCA Greater Austin. For those of you who are unfamiliar, YWCA Greater Austin provides individual, couple, family, and group therapy, care coordination services, life skills classes, school-based services, consultation, training, and advocacy. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, stand up for social justice, help families, and strengthen communities, which we've been doing in the Central Texas area for over 115 years. We truly stand at the intersection of mental health and social justice. This speaker series focuses on inviting subject matter experts to discuss topics connected to mental wellness and social justice. Being that yesterday began Hispanic Heritage Month, today's topic is the power that Hispanics bring, where we will discuss the Hispanic culture, how Hispanic people have brought social, structural, and environmental change, and the importance of the Hispanic voice. Today, we are joined by Teresa Carbajal-Ravet, founder of the cultural coworking and event hub Sententia Vera Cultural Hub, and Monet Munoz, Youth and Women's Empowerment Director at YWCA. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, so yesterday marked the beginning of the National Hispanic Heritage Month, which typically takes place between September 15th and October 15th to recognize and celebrate the many contributions and diverse cultures and extensive histories of the Hispanic community. So I'd like to start our conversation today by learning a little bit more about both of you and your connection to the Hispanic culture. So either one of you can go ahead and go.
So I'll go ahead and start. So Monet Munoz, like you said, I was born in El Paso, Texas. So I was raised on a border town. I was born and raised there. So I really had that connection and kind of like the invisible connection between Mexico and Texas. So like Juarez and El Paso kind of were this one cultural area. So I grew up really with that mixed culture of both. But then really that hard. So being so close to the border, you have people who are also I'm not Mexican, I'm American. I'm not Latino, I'm American because I was born here. So grew up with that dichotomy, as well as also like, no, with the other side of my family, like, no, we're Latino, we're Mexican American, we're connected to that. So that whole tension is kind of something I grew up with, which was really interesting, but it really kind of shaped who I was. And now kind of like, I really identify with that part of who I am, of being Latinx, of being somebody who encompasses those cultures and traditions and really sees the importance of them.
So my experience is similar in the sense that I was born in Monterrey, Mexico. My mother brought us to Ciudad Juarez with her goal of crossing over to the El Paso area and getting our citizenship. So from the time that we moved to Ciudad Juarez to about age 8, we lived in Ciudad Juarez, crossed over because we already had family in El Paso. So we would cross over almost on a daily basis. And then finally, my mother got our residency and then later our citizenship. And I do remember as a young girl helping her with that US naturalization test. So as Monet mentioned, even though that political border was there, a lot of families and a daily life routine would be crossing that border multiple times a day, right? Mm-hmm. But you still had that social tension, social challenge, and what I called ugliness, in the sense that the hierarchy was among those that either were that generation that was born in the US into a Hispano, Chicano, Latino family. And those of us that were born in Mexico with, obviously our birthright is Mexican, and attempting to cross that border legally. So it was, for me as a young girl, traumatic. I remember multiple times crying, begging to my mother. I said, why would you want to bring us here? Why would you struggle so much to bring us here where they don't want us? Every name in the book that you hear, I heard as a girl. When we didn't have our paperwork and we were of school age, my mother put us in Catholic school because they were the only ones, las monjitas, were the only ones that accepted us. Later on, when our paperwork was getting processed, we did move on to public school, and that's where the true ugliness that I experienced came. And again, it came not only from the white students and the white faculty, but from those Hispanos, Chicanos that were born here, in which they, and true, yes, I agree that the political border crossed them. They never crossed it. They were here first. This was their indigenous lands first. And yet that ugliness was still there because of this political social hierarchy that exists in the US. So I think that the identities that you hear, Hispano, Chicano, Latinx, Mexican American, all of it is due to chooses for oneself in order to categorize oneself in this political social hierarchy.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I guess you said chooses for oneself, but is it we're choosing for ourselves, or was this kind of put upon us? Because like my understanding is, these terms are created at times to categorize, to simplify. And I know that the Office of Management and Budget describes Hispanic as a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race. So, I mean, it seems like when you hear that definition, it's like, let's just put all these people in this category of Hispanic because it makes it easier for us, or whoever us is, maybe the Office of Management or the government. What do y'all think of like all those different populations of people from very distinct areas of the world being categorized into Hispanic?
I mean, so the term Hispanic, I've always seen it as something that was just a term created to lump us all together because they didn't want to see us as different. They just saw us as one type, like, oh, there are all those people that come from Latin America. Let's just put them all in one category so it's easier for us. So I've never really identified as Hispanic. I've never seen it as who I am because I feel like it's a governmental term that was created. But like Teresa said, now I feel like we're at the point where we can choose what we identify as. We've come to a point where now people use Latinx. Now people can use Latino, Latina. They can use Mexican American. It's basically your choice to decide how you identify yourself. And yes, these terms were something that was created by other people, but I think by us choosing how we want to identify, we're taking back those terms and saying, okay, this is how I identify, this is who I am. It may have been created some other way, but now I'm doing this for myself. And I'm choosing to make this identity what I want it to be. And I think that's something that we've taken back the power within the last decade or so, whereas before it didn't have kind of that power in and of itself. It was something that was meant to be derogatory.
Right.
You're Hispanic, oh, you're that. But I do remember like one story I have is when I was in college, it's when I really started studying like Chicana history, because you don't really get that in elementary, middle, or high school. You kind of get like the really superficial version of it. So in college, when you really start to be able to like learn these things and dissect them and figure out who you are and all that. So I remember coming home to my grandma and talking about Chicana history and saying like, oh, I think I'm a Chicana. And she told me like, don't you ever say you're that. That's something bad. That's something derogatory. You don't want to be labeled as that. Because to her, that word had some meaning to it. It was something like she was from Zacatecas. They ended up moving to Juarez like Teresa. And then eventually she got her citizenship in the US. But while she was living in Juarez, she would come over to El Paso and she would clean houses for the week and then go back on the weekends. So the term Chicana to her meant somebody who was trying to cause trouble, trying to cause commotion, trying to disrupt status quo that was allowing her to come in and do this work and be able to gain citizenship in the US. So by me saying that I was going to identify as Chicana now meant to her like I was going to be othered and I was going to be not seen as part of the country. I was going to be seen as this person disrupting the status quo. So I found that really interesting of that tension existing. But I think now we're at a different place where these terms have power for us. And by us choosing to identify in these different terms, we're invoking the power of what these terms mean and what people before us have given to these terms.
I agree. It's amazing. I'm a Spanish linguist. That is my degree. What I call my passion, as well as my nemesis, language has always been, because of my childhood and crossing over, a battle for me. Both my native Spanish language as well as the English language. I did not learn English until maybe after 2 years of being in public school and in several remediation classes, because language was so tied to the ugliness that I thought that I was experiencing and that I was seeing. But funny enough, Spanish linguistics became my study. And so my fascination is the evolution of words and how language is truly organic, because it is the speaker, the community, the society, the group that really gives meaning to that word and how it is used. So words such as Chicano, Pachuco was another, Pachuco and Pachuca were another words that were originally derogatory, and they were ways of bullies among us to degrade a person or groups of persons, right? And so it's fascinating when that group then takes that word that was first used in an ugly manner and makes them their own, and becomes this beautiful identifier of a community of people, of a social movement even, right? And we see it consistently. I mean, the nasty woman movement, right? In the English language became not a name calling, but became among some women something that they identified with as a powerful woman, a woman that is advocating for their gender, the power of that. So it is now something that, while institutions, agencies, organizations, such as a government department that you mentioned, Laura, wants to lump or classify people into these boxes, chooses one word, it is up to us to then take that and really consider it and saying, okay, so Hispanic, in the language definition, it's we is one who speaks Spanish, Hispanohablante. Just as we say, I'm an English speaker, I'm a Hispanohablante, I'm a Spanish speaker. So yes, I can identify with being Hispana because I do, and my native language is Spanish. So it's associated with Spain. So a lot of people whose identity is favored by being associated with Spain, coming from their family background, coming from Spain, crossing over the pond to the Western Hemisphere. If that is their pride, if that is their way of, again, socially and politically categorizing them in this hierarchy, means something to them, then yes, they will see Hispano, or they can identify with being a Hispanic. But for example, los Chicanos, their preference of Chicano comes from the Nahuatl language, the indigenous languages. It was used by the indigenous people, and the indigenous people that lived here in this area that we are now calling Central Texas, right? This area that was colonized by the Anglos. And the reason that they identify with a Chicanx or Chicano identifier is because their generations of ancestors have lived and thrived in this land even before the white man came and colonized it. And so it means something to them. It is part of who their blood and work has been through their generations of families. So I would totally understand that their native language may not have been, or their ancestral native language may not have been Spanish, and therefore no relation or no attachment or link to Hispanic or Hispano, but more to the indigenous languages of their ancestors.
No, I think the Chicano movement of itself was also like trying to connect back to that indigenous heritage that you had, of like connecting back to Aslan, which like was seen as the homeland. So I think they were trying to connect back to that part of who we were, that we're not just from Mexico, but we're connected also to these indigenous people who were the ones that were there originally.
Yeah. And there is that interesting differences also with generations, and like Monet was mentioning, it's like where we are right now as a community may be very different than where our parents and grandparents were in the past. Although you still see a lot of that, like Monet was mentioning, that her mom said, don't call yourself that, because you want to kind of, what's that term? Assimilate, integrate, those
yeah, you
terms.
You want to be part of what the majority is.
Right. Which is this white colonized culture of the US, and you want to, be welcomed or accepted. But, there's this, that challenge, because, like people identify more with the wanting to be part of this US culture, but then rejecting their country of origin. And I think back then, again, people just, well, even I say back then, but even now, I mean, people do that. I mean, look at people who do come. And I think there is some privilege for us that we all speak 2 languages, and we're all educated. And there is a privilege that maybe we can speak Spanish amongst ourselves in public, but someone who is not in our roles or our position of privilege may not be able to speak Spanish because they're afraid. They're afraid of getting hurt, and they're afraid of, if they're here undocumented, they're afraid of getting deported. So I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but it's just very complex. I think that we both hold power now, and our voices can be heard, and the younger generations maybe have a different outlook on it, but also this still exists. The racism still exists. The ugliness that as I was talking about still exists. And that, we just saw the state of Florida send people over to other other states, and the state of Texas also sending people, immigrants to other states. So it's not gone. So there's still this overarching ugliness that exists for people who are brown skinned, who are from Latin American countries, who do speak Spanish.
Yeah, and I would say with the last administration we had, the one before the Biden administration, you also saw the, so I'm going to word it, might be the word, but you saw the allowance of that ugliness to become mainstream, of where now it was like being Latino or being from there made you a bad person. And it made you like the rapist, it made you the killer, it made you all these things.
Mhm.
And you saw when now people speak Spanish, you have some people who go up to them and be like, you're in America, you speak English. So you saw that come back to light a lot more, where before it was kind of existing more, like it existed, but it wasn't as mainstream as it was allowed to become. And how it was now seen as like, oh, well, the president is saying this is okay, so this is how we act now, this is okay. The way I believe is now okay. And so you see that starting to reemerge as part of like the mainstream thought, and people thinking it's okay to call people out or to say like, oh, you're Mexican, therefore you must be a rapist, or you must be a bad person, you must be a criminal, you must have all these things tied to you. Your Spanish language is not something that's allowed here anymore. The fact that you're speaking it means you don't belong. So you saw that othering a lot more during that administration. And it's kind of just carried on, where now that's something we live with every day. So sometimes when I'm out there speaking Spanish, I'm not scared, but I'm aware of my environment. I'm
Mhm.
aware of where I am, and I make sure to see who's around and what's around, or see if there's any threats coming, or see if anything's happening, where now I have to be on high alert, whereas before I wasn't. So that has happened. I think that's something we have to battle with now, that maybe we didn't have to battle with as much 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And going back to identity, I think it's also something where we can't impose an identity onto somebody. Like I can't say like, oh yeah, that person's Latinx, because I don't know if they identify as Latinx. And I think we have to remember the term Latinx is something that was also something developed. And I think it's something that's a little more academic in its development of, okay, we're not gonna have Latino, we're gonna have a gender neutral term of Latinx. Some people don't want to identify as Latinx. Or some people, like if I were to identify somebody who just came over from Mexico, got their citizenship, or just moved over here, and I say they're Latinx, they might not like that term, because that's something they've never been exposed to, something they don't know. And for them, that's like, I don't even know what that means. So we can't also impose these identities onto people of saying you're this, because then we're doing the same thing that's been done to us for so many years. And we need to really be careful of that. Also within like Latin America and Mexico, there's a term that's like kind of battling Latinx, of being Latin, which is just has an E at the end. And it was created kind of by queer communities, a lot of them being drag queens in those communities, to also take away the genderedness of it, but also not have that Latinx. It's now just Latin. So we need to also take those into consideration. If somebody might identify as Latin and not be Latinx, and that's okay if they want to identify as that. Not everybody who's here is Latinx.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that speaks a lot to that richness, the diversity
It's the same,
within.
it's the same concept as
She might have frozen.
Yeah, I think she was.
Yeah.
It's also along the same lines as presuming that someone. Oh, okay. You hear me now?
Yeah, you're
Yes.
coming in and out, but yeah. Mm.
Okay. Well, Teresa,
Can
well,
you- Uh,
yeah, no, you're coming in and out, Teresa. It's okay.
Okay.
There you
I'll
are.
listen.
There.
No.
Now you're good.
Okay.
Do you want to turn?
I'm
you can
trying to close some applications here so that turn off my video.
Yes.
Yes.
How's that? Does that work better?
Mhm.
Yes, it's good.
Okay. I wanted to add to Monet's imposing identities to others, and assuming identify as Latinx or Hispanic or Chicano thing with language. Just because their surname may look to you to be Latino, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can quickly just start using your Spanish language with them, because that may not be true. It may not be their native language. It may not be a language that they know, period.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think also with that richness, the other thing that comes to mind is that, and you all, Teresa mentioned it earlier about, we're having to check these boxes and like all these government documents and the census and all these things, we do have to check boxes, or when we're registering for school, all these things, there's boxes to check. And with regards to the census, it does show that the Hispanic population has increased in the last 10 years. But at the same time, there's this murkiness because a lot of people are checking mixed race along with Hispanic. And so, or they'll check Latino origin or something, depending on what the boxes say. But it seems like maybe the Hispanic population has increased, maybe more so. It's just not being captured as well as it can be because of this murkiness, because people are not quite identifying with those boxes. And I know I find myself like, what box do I check? I don't know. My birth certificate says one thing because I was born in a certain decade, and that's what was being checked off in that decade, versus, how I see myself, the identity that I see myself in too.
Yeah, so you said earlier, I'm the Youth and Women's Empowerment Director. So part of my role is I am the director of our youth program. So my youth specialists go out into the schools and do programming, but part of the thing we have to do as per our contract is collect demographic information on our students. So for race, if they're Latino, Latina, Latinx, Chicano, however they identify, they have to then check off white. And for them, that is so confusing to them because they're like, well, I'm not white though. And for so long, we've been told we're not white, but we're told we have to check white here because we fit into that white category. So it's really confusing to them, and having to explain to them, well, as per this, we have to check white because we explain that whole thing to them. It's really confusing. And by doing that, it's taking away our culture. I feel like I don't identify as white. I don't see myself as white. I don't see myself as white passing, which sometimes people have put onto me like, oh, well, you're white passing. And I go, well, if you look at my skin, if I were to go into a room of white people, I would most definitely not be white. So I'm not white identifying either. But to put that onto those kids of like, oh, well, now you're white, just check white. Like you can't just tell them just check white because there's so much more that goes into that. Mm-hmm. So trying to explain that to them. And then some of them are like, but I'm not white. Like, okay, then you can just go ahead and check unspecified or other or something if you don't see that, because I can't impose that onto them. Mm-hmm. So we work with our students. We also tell them, however you identify, you check that box. And if yours isn't there, you click, you check other, or you check unspecified, or do not disclose. However you want to identify, you do that. But the fact that they want us to put Latino people into white is just really confusing. And it makes, like you said, really murky. And we're told we're not in this box, but then they want to put us in this box when it's convenient, but then they put us outside this box when it's not. So I feel like as people who are Latino, we get moved around a lot to whatever is convenient to everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we take back the power now. If we identify how we want to, and we pick our own term of this is who I am, and this is how you're going to see me, because it's taking back that power that they've had for so long. And I'm saying, now this is my power, and I'm saying I'm this. Because this is who I am, this is who I see myself as, and this is what I want to be. And this is kind of like what we try and instill in the youth that we work with of you are who you are, and you be happy and comfortable in who you are. Right. And be comfortable in your skin, and you need to be able to be happy and proud of who you are and show that to the world. Whereas a lot of times they're told like, oh no, just be this person or be this good little kid. We want them to celebrate their differences and who they are, to be able to show that to the world.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's interesting also, when you say that, we have this, if you're not white, then you're other or unspecified, which is so demeaning,
Yeah.
it's not, no, there's not a category for me because if I'm not white, then I'm an other, whatever that means.
Yep.
So
So we
yeah.
do have some students who will check that other box, but then they will write there next to it, Mexican American or I'm
Yeah.
Latino, because that's what they choose to identify with, especially as we work with the older kids. So like sixth graders takes a lot more explaining on that for them. But like high school kids, eighth grade kids, they're a lot more, they will put in there what they identify as because they want to be seen as who they are. And that's really
I,
important to see. Sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
I'm on a mission to make other, again, own it and make it positive. The other has been, or otherness has always been something that linguists and literature writers have written about the other and how the other has caused both political fear and political angst. And so what some of my work is in trying to make the other or otherness a positive term, something are mixed race, right?
Mhm.
That are of diverse blood, and that we are the better for it.
Yeah. So what can we do to elevate that? So, you both have talked about, changing the way the words are seen, the way the words are used, taking back that power, taking back those words. So how do we do that more? How can we empower people to feel that power and to take that back?
I'd say have more of these discussions with larger groups, right? Making sure that we have conversations with larger, diverse groups so that middle schoolers, high schoolers, and everybody in between have the sense that it's okay to identify as anything else other than what is listed in the page. It's like you're not constrained to what is listed on any page. It is up to you, and that it's okay to change your identity, right? That for the longest time, your parents were the ones that were giving you your identity. They were filling out these forms. They were the ones that were identifying for you. But that once you have an identity that you feel comfortable, feel empowered with, that it's okay to change it. And that throughout your life, as you learn more, as you experience more, as you find out more, that we do evolve and our identities do grow.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, it's important to have that education part. Like I was saying that I didn't get this in middle school, high school. Like I had to wait till college till I started to learn about my people and all the great things they were doing and all the great things they did and the history and like the rich history that was there. So it's like instilling this education into youth a lot earlier, like making sure they get this in elementary, middle, and high school, that they know the history of their people and not have to wait until they're 18, 19, 20 to be able to learn anything about this. Because it's important to have that history and be proud of that history earlier on, and to not be shamed by it or ashamed of it. Because with that, that really empowered me to be who I am today. But it took me so long to reach that point. And I wish I had gotten that so much earlier. So it might not be taught in the school system, it may not be there, but it's up to the adults to be able to pass down this history, to teach it to the youth, to make sure they know it, to make sure they're proud of it, to make sure they're happy with it. Make sure they're proud of it and excited about it. and not just something that can be used against them later, that they know the history and they're able to evoke that and talk about it. Because I think that's really important.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting to say that, Monet, because I heard you a little bit of what you were starting to say there too. Is like, that's an uphill battle because especially here in Texas, they are trying to do away with anything, any kind of cultural educations, book banning, anything that exposes people to any kind of diversity and real history. The reality is, the good, the bad, and the ugly of history. That's what we need to learn, is to learn from it. But it's an uphill battle. So what do we need to do as people who identify as Hispanic, Latinos, Spanish speakers? What can we do to ensure that the kids are getting this education, that the public, that the adults are getting this education? Because not everybody, you had the opportunity to learn that in college, so not
That's a
everybody
very
has that.
privileged. It's also a privileged experience. Like, I was able to go to college.
Right.
Everybody had that opportunity. Or some people don't want to go to college. So if they don't go to something that's somewhere that's going to teach them this, where do they get it?
Right. So how do we disseminate this information?
I think it's like that, as I said earlier, we have these conversations. We expose people to these conversations. Or like my youth specialist going into the school, they talk about these things with the kids. It's not something that's going to be in the curriculum, but this is a outside resource that came in to help these kids that the parents have signed off on for us to be able to teach them. So we have these conversations with them then. Like, we bring up these conversations where we can. Like, it may not be taught in the school systems, but we have these conversations. Or if we have kids, we sit down and we talk to our kids about this, because they might not be getting it anywhere else. Teach them about the rich history of our people and what it is we did and how we had to fight to get to where we are today, and how that fight was something that gave us the privileges that we have today. But the fight's not done. The fight's never going to be done. We have to keep going. And I think it's just having the conversations and being open about things that have happened in the past.
How about you, Teresa? How do we elevate those voices?
I was thinking, in addition to having the conversations and having groups or like Monet's program, is also planting the seed, the curiosity in our youth as to their ancestral lineage and their history, and in which we ask them, talk to grandma, talk to grandpa about their childhood experience and stuff. I think that curiosity will also bring in that history that we're not being taught in U.S. schools, right? Because of the fear that you, Laura, mentioned, where books are being banned and history being whitewashed. And it's all due to fear. So it's just, for me, is talk to those elders in your group that you feel safe with, and just start the conversation on a one-on-one. If a group setting intimidates you to have such a conversation, or not intimidates, but makes you feel uncomfortable, that one-on-one conversation with grandma, grandpa, or any of their generation, to learn how they experience their childhood is a gem. That is education that you will not find in any bigger group setting or in right now classrooms.
Well, I know that we are wrapping up here. So what last words do y'all want to share with our audience here?
I think I've alluded to it before, but like a little bit throughout what I've been saying, but it's be proud of who you are. Be proud of where you came from, of your ancestors, of how you got to where you are today. Like, if we're not proud of who we are as people, then we're going to not have that power. And then it's going to be able to be allowed to have us be pushed to the sides, pushed to the margins, and not have us be celebrated. So be proud of who you are, learn about who you are, investigate, and just be proud of who you are.
that I
And
see.
in addition to that, because I will ditto, in addition to that is be curious about others, right? No one life experience is the norm. No one life experience is the usual. So be curious about others, travel, be adventurous, get out of your bubble and out of your comfort zone and learn about how other people have lived and are living. And slowly but surely, I believe that fear of the unknown starts to decrease and increase your curiosity to do more, learn more, meet more people, and your circle starts looking more like several circles, because then you have a foot in so many other life experiences, so many other cultures, so many other languages, that your identity then will start being a source of pride, right? To share with others.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today and sharing your amazing perspective, and definitely want to keep these conversations going. I do want to remind everyone to keep these conversations going and, to use your voice, especially for those who do not have a voice yet or more marginalized. Remember that, if you are able to vote also, that is another way of communicating your perspectives and your ideals. And also we have a monthly dialogues on issues of racism and discrimination that we meet at the last Friday of every month. Our next one is coming up September 30th. So if you want to keep these types of conversations going, you can join us. At the beginning of November, we're also going to have our Dia de los Muertos event. And we are also going to, so please check out our website to find out more information about that. And next year, we have some exciting news. These conversations will be going into radio formats. So look for more information on that coming up too. So we'll be having some of those discussions and ramping up a lot of new things to continue these conversations going. But again, thank you all very much. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
This was a great conversation. I'm glad it's getting out there for people to hear.
Yeah.